Bear Witness News, Fairbank's most complete news broadcast. Here with the news is Patty Bear.
Good evening and welcome to Bear Witness News. Today was a big day in Fairbank. It was the day of the Honey Bowl Parade and the annual Honey Bowl Classic, two of the biggest events in the city of Fairbank. Tonight's big story is not the beauty of the parade, although it was beautiful. And it's not the excitement of the football game, although it was exciting. Tonight's big story is how one little bear taught us all a great big lesson. That bear is Ted Edward Bear. Ted E. Bear for short. Our story begins several weeks ago when Ted decided to build a float and enter it in the Honey Bowl Parade. Ted's friend, Henry Bear, laughed. Henry told Bear Witness News, only big businesses build floats and enter them in the Honey Bowl Parade. I told Ted he was nuts. Ted was determined, though. He went to the parade office and talked with the Grand Marshal of the Honey Bowl Parade. C. Emery Bear, the Grand Marshal, said, "You can't have a float in the Honey Bowl Parade. It's a big, important parade, and you're just a little bear. Your float wouldn't be good enough." Ted returned home. He was not defeated. He said, "I'm going to build a float anyway. When the Grand Marshal sees how good it is, he'll surely change his mind." Since Ted wasn't sure what to put on the float, he went to consult with his friend, Bum Bear. Bum Bear had served as superintendent of flowers for the city of Fairbank. He is a noted authority on a number of subjects. Considering the outcome of today's Honey Bowl Parade, Bum must have given Ted E. Bear the correct advice. Bum Bear recounted the conversation for Bear Witness News. When the first bears came to this country, Bum explained, they didn't have fine clothes and big houses, but every year they gave thanks for the things they did have. They called the holiday Thanksgiving. Bum Bear went on to say, it was a wonderful holiday. Every year, bears would get together, cook a big turkey, and spend the day giving thanks. Why did the bears stop giving thanks? Ted asked. Oh, with the excitement of the Honey Bowl Parade and the football games on television, I guess they just forgot, answered Bum. That's wrong, said Ted. Bears have so many things to be thankful for. I will build a float to remind them. That was the beginning of Ted E. Bear's entry in the Honey Bowl Parade. The next step was building the float. Ted drew up a set of plans for his float. Then he gathered some old boards and a set of wheels, a hammer and nails. He built a huge horn of plenty and placed it on the float. His friend Henry cooked a turkey for decoration. Before the Honey Bowl Parade began this morning, Ted and his friend Henry pushed the float to the top of the hill on Fairbank Boulevard. I'm sure the Grand Marshal will think our float is good, said Ted. Why, we might even win first prize. I don't know about that, said Henry. No, shouted the Grand Marshal, I will not allow that little homemade float in my parade. This is the Honey Bowl, not the Turkey Bowl. I knew it, said Henry. So Henry and Ted pushed the little float out of the way of the big parade. Then the parade began. The Grizzly University Marching Band played the Fairbank Marching Song. The Grizzly Cowbear cheerleaders marched in perfect step. The crowd cheered. The Fairbank Power and Light Company's float was fantastic. The Bear National Bank's float was beautiful. It showed what a wealthy town Fairbank was. Bear Air, the airline of the Bears, entered a huge float. The Organic Honey Works float showed the Bears' huge supply of honey. The parade was almost over. Ted E. Bear was disappointed. Not one of the floats said anything about giving thanks. He and Henry began to push the little homemade float home. But instead, It began to roll down Bearbank Boulevard. "Stop it," yelled Ted. "I can't," said Henry. Ted said, "Oh, no, we're going to be in the parade after all." The little float bumped and rolled down Bearbank Boulevard. The crowd stopped cheering. The judges were puzzled. How did this little float get in a honey bowl parade, they asked. Then a hush fell over the crowd. The bears all realized they had forgotten the most important part of Thanksgiving, giving thanks. And that's today's Big Bear Witness News story. This afternoon, at the halftime ceremony at Honey Bowl Stadium, the judges announced the winning float in the big parade. All the floats were beautiful, the judges said. They showed us all the fine things we bears have. But one float was very special. It reminded us of something we almost forgot, that bears should be thankful for all those wonderful things. The first prize in the Honey Bowl Parade went to Ted E. Bear. The crowd cheered and applauded. They were very thankful bears. And that's the big story from Bear Witness News. Our Bear Witness News camera teams have traveled all over the world, from Bearbank to Monster Mountain to the North Pole, to bring you this incredible tale. The story involves the kidnap of Santa Claus by a group of monsters and a daring rescue by Bearbank resident Ted E. Bear. If the story is true, it could be one of the major news events of all time. I say, if it is true, because Ted admits he was very tired when this amazing story happened. Bear Witness News presents Christmas Comes to Monster Mountain. Monster Mountain is the large, gloomy hill overlooking the city of Bearbank. Few bears have ever gone there, but according to stories, all of the gruesome monsters that ever lived live on top of Monster Mountain. The leader of the monsters is Count Dracula. Mr. Dracula refused to be interviewed by our Bear Witness News reporters, but his secretary, Miss Witch, said that she remembered the incident. She told Bear Witness News the whole affair was just an election year stunt. According to reports, Count Dracula was planning his re-election campaign. In order to win, the Count schemed and plotted. He told his secretary, "I must do something rotten. Then all the monsters will really appreciate me." He thought and thought. What is the most rotten thing a monster could do? "Aha," said Dracula, "I will kidnap Santa Claus." Miss Witch replied, "That is really rotten, boss. But how will we do it? We'll need anti-reindeer missiles, some sort of surface-to-sleigh weapons, and that'll cost a lot of money." Count Dracula shook his head. "No, Miss Witch," he said, "it will be much easier than that. I will merely write Santa Claus a letter. He is a sucker for little kids. When he reads my letter, he will bring me a present. And when he slides down my chimney, I will spring my trap. A Santa trap." Oh, Miss Witch was delighted. "You'll be re-elected by a landslide. Monsters will love you." She was proud of her boss. The two of them sat down to write a letter to Santa Claus. Dracula wrote, "Dear Santa, I have been a good little boy all year. Please bring me a spider. Love, little Dracula." Count Dracula was careful to make the letter look as though it were written by a very young monster. Count Dracula put the letter in an envelope. Miss Witch giggled. "When you're re-elected, boss, the whole world will be an uglier place." The Count laughed. "Now we must build a Santa trap." That's the way the story began. Bear Witness News sent reporters to the North Pole to interview Santa Claus. He confirmed he received Count Dracula's letter in the mail. He said he assumed the letter came from a little boy who wanted a spider for Christmas. "I thought it was somewhat unusual," said Santa Claus, "but we get lots of unusual requests, so I sent the elves out to catch a spider." Santa took off on Christmas Eve. He loaded his sleigh with a flight map, a thermos bottle full of hot soup, a list of good little boys and girls, and a sleigh full of presents. He visited a few homes, then, consulting his flight map, he set a course for Monster Mountain. Count Dracula and Miss Witch waited. "Is the Santa trap ready?" asked Miss Witch. "Right there by the fireplace," giggled Dracula. "When Santa pops down the chimney, he'll bounce right into the cage." "Quiet," said Miss Witch. "I hear him on the roof now." Santa Claus removed the carefully wrapped spider from his sleigh and slid down Dracula's chimney. Dracula slammed the door of the cage and padlocked it. "I've done it," said Dracula. "I've captured Santa Claus. I must be the rottenest vampire alive, so to speak. When the monsters see what I have done, I will get every vote on Monster Mountain." "You are fantastic, boss," said Miss Witch. "Why, you'll not only be re-elected, you'll probably win the Most Evil Player Award." At this point, our story moves to Bearbank and Ted E. Bear. As you know, bears sleep all winter. They hibernate. Most bears go to sleep about 1/2 fall and don't wake up until about 1/4 till spring. As it happened, Ted Edward Bear, Ted E. Bear for short, had stayed up to watch the Late Show. Ted lives in the Bear Arms Apartments on Bearbank's northwest side. As Ted E. Bear tells the story, he was sitting in a chair next to the window. He had just about dozed off for the winter when he heard a noise that sounded like sleigh bells. He yawned and glanced at the window. Outside in the snow, he saw 8 reindeer. Ted dashed outside. He saw Santa's sleigh and Santa's reindeer, but no Santa. "That's very odd," Ted thought. So the young bear looked inside the sleigh. There was a Christmas list and a flight map. Ted studied the flight map. Sure enough, Santa had circled Monster Mountain, and the first name on the Christmas list was Count Dracula. Uh-oh, thought Ted. Those monsters must be up to something. Maybe I should get some help. Ted glanced about Bearbank. Every home was dark. All the other bears had gone to sleep for the winter. If anybody was going to help, it would have to be Ted. But what could he do? He had never flown a bear plane, let alone a sleigh. "Well," said Teddy, "flying a sleigh can't be that hard." Ted hopped into the sleigh. He cracked the whip and yelled to the reindeer,
"Giddy up, reindeer!"
And the sleigh began a bumpy takeoff roll. Within seconds, the sleigh was airborne.
Whoa!
Ted almost fell out as the sleigh rolled from one side to the other.
Oh, boy!
The sleigh pitched up, then back down. "I take that back," said Ted. "Flying a sleigh is very hard." In an earlier interview with Bear Witness News, Ted E. Bear admitted he never really got the hang of flying a sleigh. In fact, he said, he looked silly rolling, diving, and climbing through the sky. He flew from Bearbank to Monster Mountain. Ted said he was shocked and saddened by what he saw. Count Dracula had placed the Santa trap in front of Madison Square Garden. Monsters were gathering to see Santa locked in the cage. Dracula was delivering a campaign speech. "Vote for me," he told the monsters. "I have captured Santa Claus and put an end to Christmas." The monsters all cheered. This left Ted E. Bear in a terrible dilemma. What could one little bear do against all the monsters on Monster Mountain? If he landed the sleigh, he would surely be captured. But if Santa Claus wasn't rescued, there would be no Christmas. Or would there? Ted had Santa's flight map and his Christmas list, and all the presents were packed in the sleigh. The monsters might stop Santa Claus, Ted said, but they won't stop Christmas. Ted E. Bear went to work. The the little bear worked all night. He flew from city to city around the world. He checked Santa's list carefully. He leapt into chimney after chimney with sacks full of presents. The soot from all those chimneys turned Ted E. Bear into a little ball of black dirt. Ted wondered how Santa kept his clothes clean.
Whoa, reindeer!
Finally, just as Christmas Day was dawning, he flew back to Monster Mountain. There were a few presents left over. Santa Claus always packs extras in his sleigh, so Teddy placed them in the homes of little goblins and ghouls. He even left a new broom for Miss Witch. Then he drove the sleigh to the alley behind Madison's Scare Garden, and brushing off all the soot from all those chimneys, Ted E. Bear walked right into the crowd of monsters. Count Dracula, long-winded politician that he was still making his campaign speech. "I have put an end to Christmas," he shouted. "No, you haven't," said Teddy. Every monster turned to look at the sooty little bear. Said Ted, "Christmas will continue, even if Santa is locked in your trap." Count Dracula looked around. Sure enough, little ghouls and young goblins began to appear carrying packages. One monster waved a candy cane. Another pulled a brand new ducky. Miss Witch smiled and held a new broom. "I think this dirty little bear is right, boss," she said. "Look, I got a new broom for Christmas." Dracula studied Ted with a sad look. "Then I haven't stopped Christmas," he said. "This is politically embarrassing. It could turn into a Santagate. I could lose the election." Ted smiled. "You won't lose the election. Look, all the monsters are happy." Dracula looked. "That's strange. Nobody's ever been happy on Monster Mountain." Ted E. Bear smiled. "That's what Christmas does. It makes everybody happy. In fact, you'd get a lot more votes if you let Santa Claus out of that cage." Said Count Dracula. "Maybe I would." He unlocked the cage. The monsters cheered. Miss Witch was delighted. "Vote for Count Dracula," she shouted. "He brought Christmas to Monster Mountain." And that's the Bear Witness News story of how Christmas came to Monster Mountain. Bearbank resident Ted E. Bear reported that Santa Claus was very happy to be released. And the monsters were so happy, they held a giant Christmas party. Santa, by the way, promised to come back to Monster Mountain next year, if the monsters were very good. Before Santa Claus left to return to the North Pole, he took Ted to his sleigh and said, "You gave away all the presents, Ted, and there's nothing left for you." "That's all right," Ted said. "Oh, no," said Santa Claus. He walked to his team of reindeer and plucked a silver bell from Blitzen's harness. "Here," said Santa, "and take this flight map, just in case you have to help me again." He handed Ted a North Pole flight map. Santa Claus hopped into his sleigh and gracefully circled into the sky. "Merry Christmas, Ted E. Bear," he called out. Ted watched as Santa disappeared into the night sky. He said, "Boy, I wish I could fly a sleigh like that." As I said at the beginning of our report, Ted E. Bear was very sleepy when the story happened. When he got back to Bearbank, he went to sleep for the winter. In the spring, when he awoke, he found the sleigh bell and flight map lying beside his bed. He told the story to Bear Witness News. Then, this young Bearbank resident took the sleigh bell and flight map given to him by Santa Claus and donated them to the Bearbank Museum. Today, if you go to the museum, you'll be able to see this very unique exhibit. And that's the story of how Christmas came to Monster Mountain. This is Patty Bear for Bear Witness News. You've seen a few of the exciting stories that have taken place here in Bearbank. But beside the bear who slept through Christmas and Christmas Comes to Monster Mountain, There are many other stories about Ted E. Bear and his friends. For example, our Bear Witness news cameras were on hand one Halloween when Ted E. Bear went up to Monster Mountain. Count Dracula and his monsters were going to invade Bearbank. Ted managed to head off the invasion and saved Bearbank. In another adventure, the Easter Bunnies went out on strike, and Ted E. Bear was called in to negotiate. For a while, it looked as though there wouldn't be any Easter eggs. But Ted solved the problem. All of these adventures are available in big, beautiful books about Ted E. Bear and his friends. Ask about the classic Bear Who Slept Through Christmas in book form. Or The Great Bear Scare. Or the story of the Honey Bowl Parade and football game in The Bear's Fine Thanksgiving. You can read Christmas Comes to Monster Mountain or The Easter Bear, all in beautiful book form. Since Bear Witness News was around to cover each of these exciting adventures, you will find the Bear Witness camera crews and myself in each of the Ted E. Bear books.